We made it, another week. Thank you to everybody who joined in and hung out with us last week as we tasted through a couple of our white wines. As we spoke about last week, we figured it'd be fun to get into some rosé this week, as we have a case special going on right now for the rosé online. And we're just introducing the 19 or we would be in the tasting room, and now we're virtually introducing the 2019 Bam Bam Rosé. So yeah, how's your week going?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. It's been great. Pretty excited to taste some of the rosés, especially the new release of the 19 there. We're going through the 18s and the 19 today. Kind of taste some of the differences. Big change already from here is the color, which we're going to be talking about. Later on today, on the live stream, we are going to be receiving the chef from Thomas Organic. Libry, Chef Libry is going to come out, taste the wines, and present one of the dishes he will pair with the 2019 rosé there, our Bam Bam. So he's going to be talking about the dish, explaining a little bit why, and kind of see what they do as well at the restaurants right now. Otherwise, I mean, this week has been pretty nice. The vineyard is ongoing there, crazy. A lot of leaf popping. It's been warm. It's been 70 degrees during the days, so very, very nice. So that's gonna keep us busy for the next couple of weeks there. Just try. But we are expecting some rain again, actually, this weekend. So we'll see how that goes. And how about you? We've been tasting a lot of wine this past weekend. A little less this week, but I think you managed to narrow down some of these 18 blends there.
We're definitely dialing in 18 wines and super excited about it. It's always a journey to kind of start with your rough draft renditions of the wines and kind of slide into things that really are nicely polished, well refined, really balanced. We're really hitting stride now. So very excited to get those together, get the final little tweaks in place, and then it'll be waiting to get it into the bottle.
Yeah, I had to take a little break there after a couple of days.
Yeah.
The palate gets a little overwhelmed there with all the tasting, and started to get confused eventually. But yeah, after that break, came back there and much stronger and much more kind of refreshed and reassured as well about those wines.
Absolutely. I mean, you spend a lot of time doing it, and you're right. You're tasting through lots of renditions of things. You get palate fatigue, no matter however many saltines and how much soda water you can down in between things, or whatever other palate refreshers you try to use. You'd kind of be lying to yourself if you thought that you were honed in perfectly on it. So it's always good to take that time, walk away, come back, taste them again, see, does it really sit where I expected it to sit. I was happy to say that, everything was sitting in a really nice spot. And so a few minor tweaks here and there this last week, and we're looking ready to roll.
Perfect. Very nice. So we do have Brandon here watching the comment section. So if you have any questions regarding the wines, make sure you shoot us a question there. We'll be answering everything that comes through today. And then, let's get into some of the... We're going to start with the 18 rosé.
Yeah,
and then move on to the 19. So I get you pour the glass there.
So, as you kind of mentioned last week, rosé is a really interesting process. You can tackle a rosé a whole lot of different ways. Kind of the two general spheres I feel like people tend to mention, rosés tend to involve, is a rosé based off Saunier or a rosé that you specifically pick and press for? Here we're only have so many acres to go around, and we use up everything we have for the red program. It's not really economically feasible to go ahead and say, let's produce a little less of the skins or a little less of the pick or any of these wines. We move through the wines pretty quickly, so we tend to use the Saunier. I feel like because there's a little bit of a movement towards the picking and pressing, and it's not a bad thing. Really, I think ideally a blend of those two styles really gets you a nice complex rosé. I think the other thing that kind of benefits us here is that we've moved to a little earlier, fresher pick. So, the rosés that we're getting, it's not as if we're bleeding off of something that's really high in sugar, really dark in color. Everything that we pick is in a really nice spot, not only for the red wine and to kind of have that freshness, acidity in the red wines, but the rosés themselves. When we crush and we pull the juice off, saunier, or bleed the juice, we have a really nice, light, vibrant, good, nice acidity to it, rosé to kind of work with.
So yeah, so the process will be to pick the fruits for the reds in mind. And again, since we have been trending into picking slightly earlier, with a sugar level that's a little lower and maybe a more balanced acidity too as well, it's just picking those fruits, processing the fruit, meaning just cleaning up all the leaf, twigs, and any kind of impurity that we don't want into the fermentation, and really just extract the juice from a red ferment as soon as we crushed it. And that the goal will be to mainly control color, and what else can be controlled as soon as you're looking at. Do you leave the juice on the skins for too long, or how long do you kind of think it's the best here?
So there's a lot of things that are happening right at the tail end of when we're sorting and processing stuff. So a big thing that you look at when you're using this particular method to produce rosé is the amount of skin contact time. That is what gives you the color. Some of this stuff we pull it off so early that early on you could maybe possibly mistake it for a white wine.
And I think this is kind of what both the 19, I don't know if you can see it really clearly on the video, but the 18 is definitely darker than the 19 there, much deeper color, and that would be from really the time that it hits the skins. How long do you want to leave it on? I mean, I know 19 was pretty aggressive on that length of time.
Yeah, 19 we did something a little different, something I've kind of wanted to do. We've been in the middle of a replant, so yields are down a little bit, but it buys us more time in the cellar to be really hands-on with things like the rosé. So my goal was to, the moment the fruit goes through the crusher and is pressed and juice is released, get that juice up and out. And so very little contact time. We're talking we're minutes, well under an hour for contact time, just enough, color released at crushing to give it that little tint, that little hue. This is predominantly Grenache, and Grenache, you can kind of do that with as an extract color super quickly. But this Bam Bam actually has a little more Syrah than previous vintages, but you don't even tell we got the juice off so quickly that it still maintained a really nice, light, pretty color.
We have a question.
All right, Brandon, let me have it.
All right. So what does a longer time in the skin do to the taste, if any?
So it does affect the taste as well, not just the color. Color is the most obvious thing in the bottle, but the more time juice sits on skins, on seeds, on all those components, it's being introduced to tannin components. It's introduced actually to a little more oxygen. Red ferments are kind of kept pretty open, even though I'll protect this with some CO2, with some gas. Early on, there's more exposure. Tannin's going to be like a big thing for the mouth feel of the wine. The 19, with this more limited contact time, is this really light, pretty rosé. The texture is really silky. The 18 with a little more contact time kind of feels a little bigger. You get a little more larger mouth feel on the wine as well. So I mean that's a little shift that you get when you kind of in that skin contact time, seed contact time a little longer.
Yeah, I feel this is really what I'm looking for when I buy a rosé or even drink a rosé at a restaurant. I'm just looking for something very light. I'm not looking into huge flavors or overwhelming the palate. It needs to be very easy for me to just pound down, really. That's what rosé is for. A couple of glasses here and there, just get feel good again.
Yeah, we have another question, Brandon?
We do.
Okay.
So the question is, do you treat the fermentation more like a white?
Yes, absolutely. So the rosés, I want to, just like I was talking about with the whites last week, maintain a lower fermentation temperature. I want to keep a lot of the esters, which are a lot of the pretty fruit aromas, intact and in the wine. I want to keep, we use some Mourvedre in this, and the Syrah also brings some spice components as well, and I want to keep that that spice, so I do have some nice depth in the rosé, and it's not just you know, a little bit of fruit. I want that fruit characteristics. I want as many different kind of fruit qualities as I can pull in, and as many different spice qualities that I can pull in to kind of give the depth. So we'll pull it in, and it'll be fermented in a kind of more oxygen depleted environment. Once the fermentation is really going, you don't worry about it as much because it generates CO2, which blankets the ferment. But I'll keep it. Stainless steel will be the weapon of choice for fermenting, you know, vessels.
Yeah.
So a lot like a white, very much so. The only kind of wrinkle that you get is Mourvèdre rosé, which I go back and forth between doing in stainless steel and doing in a barrel to give it a little more room to breathe, because Mourvèdre rosé tends to want to breathe a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't do a lot of rosés altogether. I mean, I just want to mention the varietals that we're using for that. You said the Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre are always kind of the main component there, with the Grenache being roughly around 75% there.
Typically, yeah.
But these past two vintages, the 19 and the 18 there, we have introduced some Pinot Noirs as well. So
yeah, I want to say as far back as 16,
okay.
Perhaps we did it. It's kind of always one of those things. I mean, the Pinot Noir makes we make such limited quantities for Genside project that really it's kind of up to whether or not we have enough to spare some for the Bam Bam, or if we have enough to just kind of do a standalone 100% Pinot Noir rosé, which we do some vintages as well for De Cru. Fantastic rosé, and so it's kind of deciding where that falls, and how much of it we have, and then you know we get some vintages, you know, like 19, where we have a little bit more Syrah in there, a little bit more Mourvèdre and those kinds of things, versus Grenache historically, still mostly Grenache by far, but a little drop just because we saw a drop in production last year, some shatter and some things like that with the Grenache that lowered our overall yield. So in one sense, and we were talking about it beforehand before we got things rolling, the rosé is a great marker of the vintage. It's kind of the earliest thing we can get to you. And I mean, going back, especially in tasting a couple vintages of these, 18 is very reminiscent of the 18 Reds, versus kind of 17 matched up, I thought, really well with the 17 Reds. Gives you an idea of our yields here, since that's kind of what we're working with. And it's a good indicator kind of what's coming down the road. So a nice fun thing to look at that way.
We are just getting questions left and right.
Perfect. Love it. Love it.
All right, so here's a question. How did you come up with the name Bam Bam? How'd that happen?
You want to roll with it, or I can?
You can go for it, yeah.
All right. So this is actually one of my favorite namesakes. So early on, when Terry played professional football, he was kind of the shot call on the field, and his audible for when he would blitz the quarterback was Bam Bam. So Jen, knowing this, and kind of this is the tough guy play, wanted to make it the namesake of the rosé, which I positively love. A little shift there from crushing another guy to a rosé. But yeah, a fun name. Oftentimes, I think people think Flintstones. I myself do as well.
Yeah.
But just a really fun name for a rosé. I think aptly used.
All right, and I got another question here. Do you pick for the Bam Bam rosé? Do you pick the fruit the same time for the Bam Bam as you would for the red wines?
So to go back, yeah, we do. But there's specific sites in, by 19 working with these blocks for a few years with the Hogues. I get real familiar with kind of what's generated, and also what's generated from the juice that I pull. And so I've got spots on the vineyard that I know at certain ripenesses will give me a really nice rosé on top of my good quality on the red wine. Again, we don't have really the acreage to really justify doing the rosé as kind of a standalone pick it and press it. But as we've moved to those earlier picks we were talking about before, we've seen, I have loved the progression of the rosé. We've been able to really get a refresh.
You could find rosé here and there, and then at some point, 1 year, maybe 5, 7 years ago now, You got rosés on every patio, and I feel like maybe we didn't used to make a rosé, but now everybody in Paso makes a rosé. Very, very different style as well. I've seen rosés that are so dark in color they look like a Pinot sometimes. Using a whole bunch of different varietals. What's your take on that? What's your favorite rosés? What would you like to work with that you don't get a chance here to make a rosé? Kind of a broader spectrum of rosés.
So, I mean, I will say, just kind of for starters, living in the area and watching the progression of rosé in Paso, that I think that for a long time it was kind of an afterthought. It was we'll pull this juice off. What are we going to do with it? Well, we'll ferment it and see if we have anything that's drinkable. It's definitely gone from something that was an afterthought to something that we all really approach and love to craft. It's a really fun and challenging wine to put together because you're pulling from these different varietals that bring really different characteristics to the table. And like I said, the differences in styles, actually, picking, really early and pressing kind of based on numbers and target alcohol stuff, I think that's become more trendy. But at the same time, anytime you're gunning for a number, you're not paying as much attention to kind of the flavor profile and all of those other components that you're looking for with it. And I do think that you kind of end up with it's a nice racy rosé, but it's a little kind of flat in terms of character. Whereas, ideally for me, I would love to pick a little bit early for that, but I would not ever pull away from kind of using some of the Saunier juice for the reds, because I just think it brings a really nice depth of character. And instead of it kind of being really just solely racy and citrus driven, we get these nice kinds of characteristics of, stone fruits and melon and all these, and some nice spices and things like that we bring in that we might not get if we're picking it that early.
Yeah, that's something that you will get with a fruit that's a little more mature, a little more on the vines there. Very nice, very nice.
So I mean, I honestly love the stuff we get to work with. If I could have my way, I think maybe the one thing I tweak is a little more Pinot Noir rosé. So if you guys can buy some more Pinot, I can make that happen.
Send it our way.
Yeah. So purchase some more Pinots. You guys down south, if you've got extra Pinot, can send it my way. I'd love to do that. It's a really fun varietal to work with, and it's a very standalone, very solid rosé. It's why it makes its way into the Bam Bam, because it just adds another little layer of complexity to the rosé.
Right. So let's dive into the 18 here. What do you feel like? I mean, super nice nose on it, very, very refreshing. The acidity comes through for sure.
The acidity's there. It's mellowed a lot from, it's a year now since release. It's been, well over a year in bottle. So it's had a lot of time to kind of mellow out, and it's really at a nice sweet spot right now. You're getting some kind of a little bit of extra fun age kind of components in there. And by those, I'm kind of talking a little extra spice component, a little more complexity to the fruit that's in there as well.
Yeah, I definitely get that little finish, the spice on the finish there. Definitely a little more. So let's talk about a fun, I don't know, how long do you think you can age a rosé? I mean, I don't age rosés. We talked last week about the whites, like the aging process is like, a ride car home. Really, rosé for me is even less than that. Honestly, I buy it, it's to drink it the day off, or that weekend. I really know all to rosés. Now we have the 18s, but we also did find a bottle of the 17 here on the table, and we're not gonna taste that today. But what in your experience is of the evolution of the rosés over the years, and how far back did you went really?
So my first introduction actually to the Hogues rosé was through a friend of mine who was working here in the tasting room years and years ago. He figured it was an apt wine to bring to a Super Bowl party, and couldn't agree more. Yeah, it was a very, very appropriate wine that way. And he actually had purchased a kind of a cellared Bam Bam for the event. So it was actually a 4-year-old rosé that he brought, and so I was fairly skeptical. I kind of, again, I'm with you. I typically was used to having stuff early on. But it was a delightful rosé. So definitely opened my eyes to the cellarability of rosé if you want to do that. traditionally, it is something that, is ready to go pretty early. You're going to hear this a lot from me as these series continue, and we talk aging. I always like to know who it is I'm working with and who it is I'm recommending stuff to, because based on the qualities you're looking for, like white wines, you kind of will start to get a little bit of a nuttiness and things like that make its way in. I think in small amounts for me, it adds complexity. It adds a little bit of something to the wine, and so it's intriguing and nice and fun with respects to that. I typically personally lean towards stuff on the younger side. That said, the 17 is tasting fantastic as well.
Yeah,
so.
it still holds up that acidity for sure, and that's something you will see as the rosé ages. The acidity slowly will start waving off a little bit. But again, I feel, we go back 3 years here. I have actually a bottle of 2009 rosé in my fridge from another winery here. I'm very skeptical about opening it. The color is super deep as well. I'm like, oh boy, I don't know when I'm gonna do that. But it's just interesting to see how those wines evolve and changes.
Yeah, I mean, if you find a rosé stashed away in the back of the fridge that you forgot about some time ago, don't panic. There's a good chance. I mean, at the bare minimum, it'll be a fun educational experience for yourself. I do recommend opening it up, give it a whirl, try it. Even, you can try it cool and let it warm up a little bit. Again, you kind of get whole different sets of aromatics and flavor, profiles as you let a rosé or a white wine warm up. But have fun with it. I mean, it's a delightful little treasure that you just found.
We've got another question for Phil, winemaker for THC Wines. Do you use a different yeast for the rosé versus the white?
Yes. So we will inoculate the rosés. I actually use a white wine strain that I've had the most success with. It's kind of built and designed for Rhone whites, but I find that it works really well with the rosés. And the other big bonus I get from using a white wine yeast is the fact that it will ferment at nice cold temperatures. A lot of the other kind of indigenous populations we have here and other yeast that we've used for red ferments, they tend to run really hot, and that's their strength. But that's not, they're going to kind of struggle as they try to ferment at a really cool temperature. And anytime yeast struggle, you smell it. It kind of starts putting off gas and some different stuff that you don't want there, and you don't want your wine hanging out with. So, you definitely want the appropriate, champion in there working for your wine.
Nice.
Okay.
Sweet. Well, let's finish up that 18 and then let's jump into the 19 rosé.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, right off the back there, what are the the vintage is different, of course. How was the 19 vintage? Since we haven't talked about that yet.
I think 19 vintage in general is going to be kind of a feast or famine vintage for people. It was wild weather-wise, and you just kind of never knew what to expect week to week. Lots of temperature swings. Temperature kind of dropped off. It ended up being a really cool year, which is honestly some of my absolute favorite years. But that cool year led to really nice prolonged hang times. So we were well into October, November again. And then we were on the very fortunate side where our last pick of 19 came one day before a series of freezes, which definitely is something you don't want to deal with. You get fruit damage. Your canopy at that point's kind of checked out and done. So you want fruit off before something like that happens. We were in a good position to where we were kind of done at that point in time. So it was a fortunate thing. And I've really enjoyed the quality. I think that certain varietals have some nice power, and other varietals have some really amazing finesse already. So there's going to be a lot of different spices in the spice rack to work with. I think that was definitely the case with the rosé as well. And the fact that we were really able to kind of hone in and pull that juice really quick after crushing it. Rosés like the one wine will filter, especially because typically it finishes fermenting shortly before we are going to bottle with it. So it doesn't have a lot of age time in the cellar. We tend to get it into bottle pretty quickly. Because of that, I want to ensure everything going to bottle is nice and stable. So we'll filter it. On its trip through the filter, you lose a little bit of color. Some of that comes back. I posted pictures of it when I did it because it was completely clear.
It looks like water.
Almost to the point where I was like, am I going to have to blend a little bit of Grenache or something into this to give it some color again, because people aren't going to believe me it's rosé. You would see the rosé, and it was perfectly clear, and you'd smell it, and you'd go, no, that's rosé. The distinct rosé nose, it's definitely true to that. But it is very light in color, which is something, my own personal little target that I like to hit.
Yeah.
I feel good about it when I got a nice, really light, bright rosé, and light in color, because I just know that we did everything we could that I kind of target stepwise, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I love the color of it for sure. That's kind of the color I look for in the store, and it's one of those the rosé I really, if I don't taste it, I just buy it by the color. It's a massive sell point for me. If for some reason the lighter, it will push me towards thinking that it is a more acidic, a lighter, crisper wines. And so it's a bit of a buy-in for those, but it's very important for sure. That color really looks nice. It's a little salmon color kind of pigments to it. It's super interesting. As for the vintage in 19, like you said, it was a very wet year. We got 22 inches of rain in that winter alone. It was a very mild summer, no super high peak of temps, only a few days here and there. And really, we walked through the Syrah in particular, and the numbers looked right. The bricks were on point, the sugar level was fine, the acidity was fine on the grape, but then you break the berry itself, and the seed itself isn't quite ripened yet. So there's still kind of little greens, a little viscosity to the pulp of the grapes as well. So decided to kind of let it hang on a little longer. It was kind of a dragging year a little bit, but we had such a small amount to pick that for us it was a quick harvest, and like you say, we just managed to pick everything just before that frost there, which we were very fortunate about. So good quality fruit in there, and again, that color, just pulling it early, it just really like the way it landed for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned there, I think you kind of hit on a point again that we had mentioned early on, which was you don't want to be too focused on numbers in general. We went through the vineyard a lot. We always do every year. But more so this year, if someone else were to bring a sample and I were to look at the numbers and just try to pick by the numbers, I would have picked things earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you see the fruit, as soon as you feel the fruit, you break open berries, you chew on berries, you look at stems. Nothing else indicated that the fruit was fully ripened yet. So physiologically, it was kind of running behind the numbers that year, which you get in some vintages. And it was my first time working here on property and seeing that. So like I said, you have kind of areas you like to be in, but you got to be willing to break that and kind of break your preconceived conceptions and targets and be willing to do something a little different when Mother Nature provides you something a little different.
Right, absolutely. Let's dive straight into that rosé there. Ooh, those aromatics is fantastic, super nice. So I have barely tested it really. We just started the sales, I think, this week. So it's just, I haven't had a full bottle yet, but really liking it already. Just the smell of it, super elegant there. The alcohol level as well. We talked about the alcohol last week with the whites. The alcohol level on this, since we picked with the red in mind as well, we're landing right at that mid-14s there, which is kind of where we want to be for it. So it's not super high. Alcohol will bring sweetness to the wine, even the rosés, and so it's kind of key when you're trying to do something that's a little brighter, a little cleaner on the palate there, very easy to drink, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, we mentioned earlier, we're really the main focal point when we're picking is to ensure that we have a high quality red wine. The fact that this wine lines up right where the reds have historically been for the last couple of years, right in those mid-14s, which has been a pretty good sweet spot for us. Just kind of goes to show that, again, it's an indicator for vintage. We're right in that nice spot that we prefer to be in, which is good.
Right. And for the mouthfeel there, what do you think on the palate?
It's crisp, it's bright, it's everything you want a young rosé to be. I'm with you. I'm kind of enamored with the aromatics of the wine. It's got some really nice floral components. It's got some really nice spice to it. All of that working with the fruit that's there. Mm-hmm. So it's got a fair amount of complexity. I actually really love the Mauved's kind of showing itself right now, and I really enjoy a good Mauved rosé. And so it's kind of in a fun spot to start. Nice.
So last week we touched on some of the pairings with the wines. This week we decided to invite one of the chefs from Little Paso downtown here. So we have Chef Libry from Thomas Organic joining us today, presenting a dish. He tasted the rosé a couple of days ago already. He's bringing his dish today. He's going to taste it again and then present you guys the dish. Hopefully you can do those at home. It's an easy one to do. It's one of my favorites. It is a French dish. I'm not biased at all. But without further ado, he's going to take the stage. He's going to grab a glass and then explain to you guys what he did today. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, we figured it'd be nice to get a professional in here. You don't have to hear our amateur opinions on stuff this way. And a huge thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
You've done some awesome work with us, prior to everything kind of coming to a halt recently. Doing some lunches back here. I got to say, they've been fantastic. It's been a huge step up. We typically do a little bit of like a mini vertical paired with a 3-course lunch, and Chef Libry here has knocked it out of the park. So we figured it was natural to kind of reach out to you and go, hey, we've got some rosé. We're locked up at home. What could we do? What could we pair?
Sure. So, we tasted this a couple days ago, and I really wanted to focus on what you have in your fridge, what you have in your cupboard. If you don't have some of these things, they're easily found at the grocery store. But it's a very simple, bright salad. I think the reason this rosé goes so well with it, there's so many components in this dish that go well with the rosé. Whether it's the olives and the tomatoes or the tuna. There is a little bit of garlic and anchovy in the dressing. I think sometimes people have a tendency to overuse those two ingredients, but when you use them in moderation, both the garlic and the anchovy, they really complement the wine well.
Nice. I am definitely guilty of using a little too much garlic myself.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely love it. So, what goes into pairing with the wine?
A lot of it is it's seeing what's in season. It's obviously tasting the wine. For this one, like I said, there was things that I wanted to make sure that you could find in your fridge or your cupboard. For example, if you don't have olives, you could substitute in a little bit of capers. The tomatoes, they don't have to be cherry tomatoes. If you have a tomato in the fridge, you can use that. The tuna is just, the canned tuna that you get. It does tend to be a little dry, so what I do is I add some fat to it, whether that is an aioli, a mayo, or maybe just a little bit of olive oil and lemon juice.
Nice. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So, you guys are still operating. What are you guys providing down at Thomas Organic?
Yeah, so right now we are doing family meal 3 days a week. So that's happening on Wednesday, on Friday, and on Sundays. And what we're doing with that is we're trying to keep it a little more homey and casual, like a family meal.
Nice.
We've done some Indian food that's gone really well. This Sunday we're doing pot pie, which is something we're excited about. Things like shepherd's pie we want to do, just some more comforty, homey kind of things.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there you go. You guys are local. You should definitely check it out. He is delivered on any meal that I've ever had from you. It's been absolutely fantastic. So I have the utmost confidence that everything that's coming out of there is tasty and right on point.
Yeah.
So let's one more time go back, because I have my thought process when I'm kind of dissecting a wine and what I think I would pair it with, or kind of what I'm working with. Are you looking at kind of, what components? Is the acidity, mouthfeel, tannin structure, all those kinds of things? Like, what do you kind of, when you're pulling apart and thinking, are you just going with kind of classic pairings, or you like to stretch the bounds a little bit that way?
I do a lot of classic pairings, yes. I think that when looking at the dish, it's important to make sure you have the components necessary to pair with the wine, whether that is the salty brininess from the olives, the tuna, shellfish goes really well with rosé. So it's kind of like, it's looking at the dish as a whole and saying, well, if you don't have, I don't know how many people have crab or shrimp in the freezer. Tuna is something you always have. So it's kind of just basing it off, for this dish, what you have in your cupboards, and maybe just, taking a step to the side. So instead of the crab or the shrimp, maybe you add the tuna. Again, if you don't have the olives, you can add a little bit of capers, because that's kind of going to give you that salty brininess as well. So it's really just the that you can do at home. And again, a lot of these things you're going to have in your fridge. You're going to have eggs. You probably got a tomato lying around somewhere. If you don't have Niçoise olives, maybe you got green olives or something, and it's just things that you can kind of look in the cupboard and see, this dish has 8 components on it, and I have 6 of them. So maybe I'll run out, I'll grab some lettuce, whatever that is.
Nice. So if we were to take all the restrictions away, what would be your ideal rosé pairing?
What I have really enjoyed in the past, something that I'm very passionate about, is scratch cooking, local purveyors, those kinds of things. I've always done a lot of charcuterie in the past. It's mainly been whole muscle charcuterie, like smoked hams or duck pastrami or duck bacon or things of that nature. But we've paired a charcuterie board with our duck pastrami, and then we made ham out of beef cheek, like a smoked ham. And it was lightly smoked. It wasn't a lot of smoke, but one of my favorite pairings was the charcuterie board.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So something that I will look forward to. I'll bug you about
Yeah,
making that some
absolutely.
Any questions? How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're awesome. They want to get closer up to the picture of the salad that I'm letting them know that we're going to post afterwards. A link to it where they have the recipe and everything ready to go.
Absolutely. We'll try to follow up with recipes and some ideas for you guys to work with. And we really appreciate it. Our target is trying to make it so you guys can create some of this stuff at the house and play with it. And by all means, if you make it, snap a picture with some rosé, send it our way, send it Thomas Hill's way. Let us know that you're out there and enjoying it and what you think of it. We're gathered here to try to connect with you guys and to bring a little bit of what's still happening in our neighborhood to your neighborhood. So, anything else?
What's happening next week? What's going on next Saturday?
You're right. Okay, that's why we have producer Brandon here. He keeps me on track this one time. So, as I said, this is something that we will kind of keep consistent and ongoing. We want to we'll map it out, I think, for the next couple weeks what we're doing, but we're always looking for you guys to reach out to us with wines that you want to see us open, stuff you've got in your cellar, stuff you're interested in ordering, whatever it might be. We're happy to open it up here, taste through it, and kind of let you know where the wines are at and what we think, hold on to, open up. What we might pair with it. So reach out to us that way. Next week we'll kind of hop back on with the reserve wines, and so that will actually be the 46 and 5 blocks reserve from the 2017 vintage. So kind of back to what went out in the last spring shipment, and after that we'll kind of move into some stuff that we've got in the library. I think this is the plan. So. On behalf of myself, Phil LaMontagne, the winemaker here at TH Estates, Chef Libry here, Thomas Organic, we've got producer Brandon and Cyril. Thank you again so much for hanging out with us. It means a lot. It's really fun to be able to connect with you guys. I know it's a little different than it has been, but this has been a fun way to get back out there and to kind of get back in contact with you all. So thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you again next week, and then look out for that recipe. That'll be up shortly.
It'll be on Instagram and Facebook.
Instagram and Facebook. Okay.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thank
See
you.
guys.
Thank you.